Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that's both incredibly historic and, honestly, quite captivating in how it plays out today: the election of a new pope.
Mm,
Obviously, the passing of Pope Francis at 88 has really focused the world's attention on the Vatican. Is
mhm.
this process wrapped in centuries of tradition? And, well, there's a definite kind of drama to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, when a figure of that global significance passes, the question of succession is huge. And with the papacy, as our research shows, the selection process is, well, it's far from simple.
Right.
So our aim here in this deep dive is really to unpack the key mechanics of how a new pope gets elected. We want to clarify the steps and maybe uncover some fascinating details that people might not know about.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Where did this whole idea of a pope even come from? It wasn't just created overnight, surely.
Not at all, no. The core belief in the Catholic Church is that the pope is the direct successor to St. Peter.
Peter, one of the disciples.
Exactly. One of Jesus' 12 disciples, and considered the very first bishop of Rome. The Petrine theory is key here. It basically argues that the authority Jesus gave Peter, way back around AD 30, has been passed down unbroken through all the popes since then.
Wow, like a continuous chain?
Pretty much, yeah. A 2,000-year chain of leadership.
That's quite a concept. And the actual title, Papa, was that always the Pope's title?
That's interesting, too. Originally, Papa was more of a general term like father.
Mhm.
Early Christians used it for various respected church leaders, sort of a term of endearment.
Ah.
It wasn't until around the 6th century that the Bishop of Rome started to claim exclusive use of that title. And this really goes hand in hand with the idea of papal primacy.
Primacy, meaning top leader.
Exactly. The belief that the Pope, as Bishop of Rome, holds the highest authority in the church above all other bishops. It connects back to Rome having this unique spiritual leadership role right from the early days.
Okay, fast forward a bit. I mean, choosing a pope, I can't imagine it was always this structured conclave thing we see now. It sounds like it could have been pretty messy.
Oh, you're absolutely right. For the first 1,000 years or so, up until the 11th century, popes were generally chosen by, well, the clergy and the worshippers in Rome.
Just by popular opinion?
Kind of, yeah. And as you can guess, getting everyone to agree was often difficult.
I bet.
Yeah, the sources show this period had lots of disputed elections, sometimes even rivals claiming to be pope. At the same time, they were called anti-popes.
Anti-popes. Wow. So not a smooth process then.
Definitely not always smooth. It was vulnerable to different factions, political pressures, you name it.
So what changed? When did it start getting more organized?
A really big turning point was in 1059. Pope Nicholas II issued a decree. And this decree basically said that only the cardinal bishops could elect the pope.
Just the cardinal bishops.
Yes. And it's interesting because Nicholas II himself became pope right after a period with two anti-popes, so he knew firsthand how unstable the old system was.
Right, makes sense.
This move really cut down the influence of, the Roman nobles and the lower clergy. It laid the groundwork for what we now know as the College of Cardinals, which was formally set up around 1150. It was about creating a more defined, less chaotic way to choose the leader.
The College of Cardinals, we hear that term all the time. But I guess the rules for who's in it and how they vote have changed too.
Oh, absolutely. Over the centuries, things like the criteria for being a cardinal, the actual voting rules, even the idea of locking them away, the conclave, all of that has been formalized and tweaked.
Tweet how?
Well, for instance, needing a two-thirds majority vote. That dates back to 1179.
Okay.
And the number of cardinals has swung wildly, some of only around 30 in the Middle Ages. Then Pope Sixtus V set it at 70 in 1586. Much later, Pope Paul VI in 1975 set the maximum number of voting cardinals at 120.
Ah, so there's a limit on voters.
Yes, and linked to that, the rule that cardinals over 80 can't vote, that came in 1970. It's all been part of this ongoing effort to, refine the process.
That is a lot of changes over time. So what are the numbers now? How many cardinals are there and how many can actually vote?
Okay, so right now, there are 222 cardinals in total, globally. But because of that age limit, only 120 of them are currently eligible to vote in a conclave.
120. That's the magic number from 1975.
Exactly. And interestingly, the sources mention that by the end of next year, 2025, another 8 cardinals will turn 80, so they'll become ineligible. The group is always subtly shifting.
Okay. So Pope Francis has passed. What happens immediately? Who gets the ball rolling?
So when a pope dies, or resigns, though, that's very rare.
Right. Benedict XVI in 2013 was the first in centuries.
Exactly. First since 1415. But yeah, upon the vacancy, all eligible cardinals, so those under 80, are obligated to come to Rome for the election, the conclave, unless they're seriously ill or something.
And when does the conclave actually start?
It has to begin between 15 and 20 days after the Pope's death or resignation. That window was set back in 1922, mainly to give cardinals time to travel to Rome from all over the world.
Makes sense. So these 120 or so cardinals scatter. They're the voters. But who can actually be elected pope? Is it only one of them?
Well, the electors are those cardinals under 80. Now, technically, any baptized Catholic male could be elected pope.
Really? Anyone?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
But realistically, for many, many centuries, the choice has always fallen on one of the cardinals present in the conclave. It's just the established practice.
Okay. And I read something about them getting assigned local churches in Rome.
That's right. When the voting cardinals arrive, each one gets assigned a titular church in Rome. They're kind of expected to visit it, maybe say Mass there.
Why? What's the point of that?
It sort of serves two purposes. It gives these international figures a little connection to the local Roman church scene, and, well, it also subtly raises their public profile just before they all disappear for the vote.
Huh. And I also saw a note about the Sunday before the conclave feeling a bit like a final campaign stop, but nobody admits they're campaigning.
That's a really perceptive observation, yeah. People who watch this closely often note that. The days right before the conclave can be quite delicate. Potential candidates, the papabili as they're sometimes called, are apparently very careful.
Careful how?
Just careful not to look like they're campaigning,
Yeah.
avoiding anything that seems too self-promoting. It's a time of intense, but often very quiet assessment among the electors themselves.
Then comes the famous part. They get sealed inside the Sistine Chapel. The secrecy around that always seems incredible.
It is. Secrecy is absolutely central to the whole idea. Once the College of Cardinals officially starts the conclave, they are literally locked inside the Sistine Chapel area until a new pope is elected.
Locked in completely.
Pretty much. Unless there's a serious medical emergency, they stay inside. They all take a very solemn oath to maintain absolute secrecy about the proceeding. Contact with the outside world is severely restricted. Only very few specific people are allowed any interaction.
Why so strict?
The goal is to create an environment that's completely free from outside pressures or influence, just the cardinals and their conscience guided by the Holy Spirit, as the leaf goes.
Okay, so take us inside those locked doors. How does the actual voting work? Is it just raising hands?
Oh, no. It's very formal, very ritualized. It happens in stages. First, there's what's called pre-scrutiny. This involves distributing the ballot papers.
Special papers.
Yes, printed ballots. The cardinals write their choice, fold it, and then they choose, by lot, some cardinals to be scrutineers, vote counters, and others to collect votes if needed, like from sick cardinals.
Okay.
Then comes the scrutiny proper. Each cardinal, in order of seniority, goes up, holds up his folded ballot, declares an oath, and places it in a special chalice or urn. It's all done very deliberately and secretly.
And after everyone's voted?
That's the post-scrutiny. The scrutineers mix the ballots, count them to make sure the number matches the electors present, then they read out the names on each ballot one by one. The votes are tallied, checked, double-checked, and then they're burned.
Burned. Right, that's key.
Absolutely. So on the first day, there's usually just one vote in the afternoon.
Okay.
If that doesn't produce a pope, meaning no one gets the two-thirds majority, then on the following days, they vote up to 4 times. 2 rounds in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
And burn the ballots each time if there's no winner.
Exactly. Burned after the morning session if no result. Burned after the afternoon session if no result.
What if they get stuck? Like day after day, no winner?
There's a process for that, too.
Yeah.
If after 3 full days of voting, there's still no pope, they take a pause. A whole day dedicated just to prayer, reflection, maybe some discussion among themselves.
A reset day.
Sort of, yeah. Then they resume voting for another cycle. If, and this is rare, they go through several of these 4-day cycles, voting pause, without electing anyone, the rules can change slightly to potentially allow for a runoff between the top 2 candidates from the previous ballot. It's designed to prevent a complete deadlock.
Wow, that's intricate. And this burning of the ballots leads us straight to the smoke signals, the Fumata. That's the bit everyone watches for outside.
Exactly right. The Fumata, the smoke, is the traditional way the Vatican signals to the world whether a vote has been successful or not. They actually install a temporary stove and chimney in the Sistine Chapel just for this purpose before the conclave starts.
And this has always been the way. Smoke signals.
Well, burning the ballots, yes, that seems to have been done for a long time. But the specific code white smoke for a new pope, that's actually relatively recent. Probably only dates back to the late 19th, maybe early 20th century. Before that, it wasn't always so clear. Black smoke means no pope elected yet.
How did they used to make the different colors? I heard it involved straw.
Yeah, that's the traditional method. To get white smoke, they'd apparently add wet straw or damp hay to the burning ballots. For black smoke, they'd use dry straw or maybe something like terry pitch.
Sounds a bit unreliable.
It could be. There were definitely times when the smoke color was ambiguous, leading to confusion in the square outside. So since 2005, they've used chemical additives to make it much clearer.
Chemicals, what kind?
They revealed the formulas in 2013, actually. For white smoke, it's a mix of potassium chlorate, lactose like milk sugar, and something called conifer resin.
Okay.
For black smoke, it's potassium perchlorate, anthracene, which is used in dyes, and sulfur. It's designed to produce a very distinct black or white plume.
And did it work in 2013?
Well, mostly. Although, interestingly, during that conclave that elected Pope Francis, they still had 4 plumes of black smoke come out before the final white smoke appeared. So the process took a little while.
4 black smokes. And wasn't there something about a seagull? I remember seeing pictures.
Ah, yes, the seagull.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. It really captured people's attention. Just a few hours before the white smoke finally went up for Pope Francis, this white seagull landed right on top of the Sistine Chapel chimney.
No way.
Yeah. Lots of people watching in St. Peter's Square saw it as this kind of hopeful, almost symbolic sign that maybe, just maybe, a decision was close.
And then?
And then, sure enough, not long after, the white smoke appeared. The bells started ringing, and eventually, Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio was announced to the world as the new Pope Francis. A really memorable moment, adding a little extra touch to the tradition.
So putting it all together, this whole papal election thing is this amazing mix, isn't it? Deep, deep historical roots, these incredibly detailed rules that have changed over centuries, and then these very public, almost theatrical signals like the smoke.
Precisely. You go from the core belief in apostolic succession, the line back to Peter, all the way through the evolution of the College of Cardinals, the intense secrecy and ritual of the conclave itself, right up to the chemical composition of the smoke signals. It's quite unique.
Yeah.
It's a tradition that's ancient, but it's still actively shaping one of the world's biggest religious institutions today.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how an institution like this balances holding on to centuries of tradition with, well, the needs and realities of today's world. What part of this whole process, really resonates or stands out, and what does this ancient ritual maybe tell us about how big old institutions handle continuity and change? Definitely something to ponder.